Thank you for joining us again today for another edition of the Mojo AI podcast. We've got one of our favorite guests back today, Nick Kakasenko, the
Pretty
VP
funny.
of Health and Safety at Sterling Infrastructure.
Good morning to you guys. Hopefully everything's going well for you today.
Yeah, so far. Thanks for joining us again. Today, we want to talk about something that isn't 100% safety related, but that a lot of companies in the construction space and other kind of labor driven spaces are facing. And that's labor shortage and
Yeah.
other challenges around that with high turnover, challenges hiring. But we do want to talk about how that impacts safety managers and safety directors specifically, but also touch on like how this is affecting companies in broader ways and maybe some tips and thoughts on how to navigate this. For a little bit of reference, Nick, can you give us a quick overview of the Sterling organization? Like how many employees you have, where they're all located, the type of work that you're doing?
No, absolutely. So just some information about us, like Sterling. We're really a large construction conglomerate. We have multiple companies throughout the United States. We have one company up in the Northeast called Patillo. We have another company down in the Southeast called Plateau, and there's multiple subsidiaries below that, below Plateau. Shifting over, we have a couple companies in Texas, one called Texas Sterling, another called Teal Stone. There's actually a couple other professional plumbers group, another one called Dowdy Land Surveying, and we're in the process of finishing out a large acquisition called CEC Facilities Group. And from there, we a couple companies out on the West Coast too. Ralph Wadsworth was the base out of Utah. Another company down in Arizona, actually a couple companies in Arizona, one Baneke Construction Company, and there's another subsidiary of Teal Stone over there. The last company is Road and Highway Builders in Sparks, Nevada. So globally, we have approximately about 4,000 employees across the United States and obviously multiple different areas and multiple different types of work. We're broken up into three different divisions of the company. Of one, the E-Infrastructure Group. CEC Facilities will also be in that environment. They do a lot of stuff with, obviously, the E-Infrastructure world, doing the whole data management, the large data warehouses that are coming online, those types of facilities. We have the Transportation Group, which does a lot of bridges, underground work, utilities work, roadway work. Then we have our building solutions that really focuses on the whole building side, from flat slab work to also doing plumbing installations in houses. So we're pretty diverse in multiple different areas, and like I said, spread out all throughout the United States.
Yeah. It sounds like you are doing a broad range of types of construction all over the country.
Yes.
What triggered my interest in this topic was something that you had mentioned in a separate conversation a month or two ago. And it was about the hiring challenges that you're having and people coming or being hired and then just not showing up.
Right.
And then you find out, oh, they just went to this other company just down the street. Can you expand on that and talk about overall what are some of these hiring and turnover related issues that you're seeing?
I think it's with a lot of larger companies that are out there today's day and age. If you go to any conferences or you sit in it with any seminars of, it doesn't even matter if it's safety related. It's an epidemic in the construction industry. We're just really trying to find people who, number one, are interested in wanting to get into construction, and number two is that they want to make it their lifestyle. You talk to any of our HR managers, the hiring struggles. We go out, we process individuals, we put them through the whole new hire orientation part. They fill out all their paperwork online. They do everything they're required to do. Then Monday morning, they never show up for work. And so that just creates multiple challenges for us within the organization, is that we're planning on having these individuals start work on X day. So you plan your work for what's going to be going on, and the supervisors are looking at what their employee count is to perform their work, and all of a sudden somebody doesn't show up, or two people don't show up because that they were processed through. And so it puts stress on the crews. It creates some safety risks related to that, because now you're trying to do more with less, and it could, maybe if it's an operator who doesn't show up or whoever, it definitely creates a level of stress and challenges for us in the workplace.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about something you just said, like the stress that it puts on safety?
For any of the new hires that we bring in, and I'm not saying that this person is green, brand new to construction. It's a new hire. It doesn't matter if they have 10 to 15 years of working in the industry. Just the information that we've looked at, some of those studies, breaking down data, analyzing data with any of our new hires, that's typically where we see our highest frequency of incidents was within that first 90 days of employment for any employee. Like I said, it doesn't matter if they're green, it doesn't matter if they have 15, 20 years of experience. And a lot of that is related to is number one is you're coming into a whole new work environment. You're learning a whole new world of processes, procedures, people you're working with, the way of life within an organization. So it takes some time to understand that part of it. The other part with that is that even though you talk with the employees, you try and get as much history as you can from them, you really don't know what environment they worked in before in their process and procedures, whatever company they work for. Is that if they cared about employee safety, they wanted to do things right, those types of things. So you have to work through some of those processes and cultural aspects of where the employee previously worked. So because of historically, even though with their experience, and just because you have experience doesn't necessarily mean it's the right experience, that what they've done might have been acceptable in another organization, and they come over and they work for us or any of our subsidiaries, and what was acceptable before is not acceptable now, and it could lead to a higher potential for injuries.
Yeah. And that sounds extra challenging if you can't get people to even stay through that first 90 days or show up on the first day.
Yeah, we've had folks that have come through, been on for 2 or 3 days, and all of a sudden say, this isn't for us, and they just don't show up anymore. You've gone through and you've invested PPE in that employee, you've invested time in that employee, you've put them through a drug test, the new hire orientation. To bring an employee on, if you want to do it properly and walk them through the process of, at a minimum, getting up to speed or having a general understanding of what the company's processes and policies are, that's a time investment for an organization. Every time we hire an employee, we're spending money on it. The administrative side, from our HR department to all this time it spends to process the paperwork, fill out the paperwork, have them go through the new hire orientation, the drug test, the personal protective equipment. There's quite a bit if you're going to do it the right way for getting an employee started to work for the company.
Yeah. Are you seeing this issue more with either certain trades or employees at certain levels of experience or at certain regions of the country, or is it been pretty consistent all over?
There's consistent all across the board with trying to hire globally with bringing people in. And I don't think it really makes any difference if it's a union or a non-union environment. We work both worlds, and even talk with some of the companies that they work with the halls to get qualified individuals out, and they're bare too. We're just being stretched right now for personnel, and getting qualified people is key for any company to be successful, but even to get people to bring them into the environment, to train them, to show them the ropes, and hopefully make a career out of construction. There's definitely challenges to this. We do outreach. We've even gone down to elementary schools now to try and get interest in the construction industry. Going out to college fairs, to job fairs. It's a full-time effort, full court press to get people into construction.
Yeah, I was going to ask, why do you think this is happening? And it sounds like you're doing things to address it. From your perspective within the company, what do you think are the main causes of this issue?
Oh, geez. When you look at it, construction is hard. It can be a very rewarding lifestyle. It can be a very good lifestyle. But if you look at the guys are tough, it's physical, it's demanding work on a lot of individuals. And that if you take the environment of, like right now in the middle of the summer, in some places it's 100 degrees outside, hot, humid in some areas, or you can go do that, or you can go work somewhere else and make approximately the same amount of money in a more comfortable environment. And people are just shying away from working in the construction industry to go, okay, 100 degrees outside, or go work in AC. They're going to work in the AC.
Do you think salary is a big issue or a big contributor to this?
I don't think not as much as it used to be. Companies are paying well all across the board, but even you're competing with some of the businesses in retail. If you look at some of the salaries in those environments, they are comparable to construction. And so I think if you also take a look at that's another reason for it too. But the salaries, the price for employees per hour is definitely going up in construction. Geographically, that it's going up because it comes back down to the whole supply and demand type issue. Is if you can't get people in to work, then you have to start looking at increasing the wages to try and get people through the door.
Yeah. What about specifically in safety roles? Are you facing similar challenges getting people into the safety side of construction? Or is it,
Yes.
are you seeing it more on the labor side?
No, we're seeing same challenges in hiring safety professionals in construction. We've actually got down to the point of looking at and trying to find somebody like with 10 or 15 years of experience has been a challenge for us in some of these positions. And so we've been actually going back down to either hiring somebody right out of school and spending a lot of time investing in them. Hopefully it turns into a long-term employee, a long-term relationship with them, where they stick around for 10 to 15 years and want to make working in any of our subsidiaries their career choice. And we've had a lot of success with that once we've got people through the door, and just the way we spend time with them, cultivate that relationship. You have to invest in your employees. And the other thing that we've been doing is if there's some of the craft folks, if they are expressing interest, or anybody else who is expressing interest in safety and are passionate about it, we're harvesting that too and trying to get them more involved into that safety position. Again, going back and investing into that employee, getting them trained, spending the time with them out in the field, start giving them some sole responsibility so that they grasp and understand it. It's funny that we've seen over the years that some of the folks in the trades would always joke around and say, hey, can I get into safety? It looks easy, right? I want to do that because I just want to walk around the job and look at stuff, right? Then you start integrating them in and they go like, I had no idea it was all this. They just see that little microscopic piece of what safety is all about. There is time out in the field, and yes, there is looking at and evaluating what's going on, but they don't understand the whole backside of what happens with all the paperwork that you have to do, involved with meetings, planning, getting all that stuff involved. That's why when we bring somebody on, it's just not throw them into the fire, which is the way it used to be, right? This would be like, okay, here you go. Here's your parachute. Jump out of the plane and figure out how you put your parachute on before you hit the ground, right? And so now it's, if you have to spend the time with the people and invest into them, because people are such a commodity in today's age where you really have to invest. If you want to see success, you want the people to be long-term, you really have to spend the time with training them, mapping out a plan, and investing and spending time with them and explaining things and ensure that they understand it and move on, which is a completely different environment to when I was started. It was like, there's the door to the plane, here's your parachute, figure it out before you hit the ground. And if you figure it out, you're going to survive. But if you don't, good luck to you.
Yeah, that's interesting because it sounds like you're describing like a modern, effective way of managing employees. Like you said, mapping out a path for success, lots of training, keeping them engaged. But employees, sounds like they're not reacting to that. They're just not showing up or quitting without notice. I don't know. It sounds to me like there's a disconnect.
We're seeing that more like maybe in the skilled trades where you go and bring somebody on. If you're going to hire a laborer or a carpenter, you push them through that process of the new hire orientation and everything with that. And that's where we're seeing some of that. They're just people just not even showing up for work. And we don't know the reason why. Maybe they got another job for 25 cents an hour, which we've seen before, or they just decided, I don't think this is for me, and they just don't show up, or they come in for a couple of days and they leave. But a lot of time with some of the management, the supervisory type roles, maybe engineers, project coordinators, and administrative folks, that they're the ones who they come in once you hire them, they're there. But also is once they're there, you really have to develop some type of long-term plan with that employees to, again, once you get them through the door and once you get them set up, is ensure that they have, if they want to look at doing something bigger and better and greater, that you really spend the time to map that out for them.
Yeah. Were you at the ASSP event earlier this week?
I was not.
Okay.
Was that the one in Orlando?
Yeah. Yeah. We had a few people there. I'm curious if this topic is starting to be addressed by these large organizations, if they're doing workshops or sessions to try and figure out what to do about this.
Yes. The answer to your question is yes. A lot of the conferences that I've been to, I didn't make the ASSP this one, but previous ones, the AGC, it's always a topic of conversation. I think the NSC here next, what's that, in September,
Yep.
that will always be a topic of conversation. But at any of the conferences, I think the AGC one, the national conference there a little while ago, it was a topic of conversation. And any of the organizations that are out there, it's always on the forefront is, okay, we have all this work to build across the United States now, where roadways, infrastructure, all these data centers that are coming online now, all this work that's out there. And it's like trying to get the people now to build the work. And that's the challenge.
Yeah, because you hear constantly about the demand for skilled labor like this, especially around data center construction.
Yeah.
But I wonder if salaries just need to go even higher.
I think it's always going to come down to an issue of supply and demand, is that if you can't get people through the door, then sure, I'm sure salaries will start to tick up until you can start to get the people through the door. If you look at some of the data centers that are out there now, I mean, they're 2,000, 2,500 people on one job site. That's massive. That's a massive amount of people in one area to be working at one time. And that's what it takes to build those. They're huge. And anything, even with bridge projects that are out there now, they could take up to 500 to 700 people to build some of these mega projects. And I think some of our larger companies, they have, I think, 1,200 employees that they have on right now, and 700 to 1,200 employees. And it's a constant hiring cycle where if you're going to build the work, you got to get the people through the door. So you're constantly hiring people. You have people leaving, coming, going. It's a constant cycle for us.
Yeah. I've heard the new Meta data center in Louisiana is going to max out at around 10,000 people. It's crazy. It's like a small city.
It's a small city. I don't know. I just don't know how, if you're going to hire 10,000 people, that's for the companies that are building it. And I think one of the advantages of doing those types of these large mega projects, these data centers, is that it might take 10,000 people, but you might have 10 companies or 20 companies that they're hiring all these individuals that they're coming out and doing these smaller segments of the project. It's not like they're going to be hiring 10,000 to put on there. Like with one of our companies, Plateau, they would go on there. They might have 150 employees on a Meta project or any of the data centers that are out there that they're heavily involved in. So that's how they get that, is that they're bringing in multiple companies to help orchestrate all that work that's going on.
I'd like to talk a little bit more about how this impacts safety specifically. Because of the turnover or these issues that you've described, have you had to make any changes in the way that you run safety to accommodate this, whether that's trying to shorten training times or onboarding times at all? Have you done anything that you think has helped on the safety side?
Sure. I think some of it with the onboarding, going to an online platform for some individuals seems to be working out better, where they're just not stuck in a classroom for a period of time. That seems to be helping out a little bit with it. We all understand that just because you run somebody through a new hire orientation doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be a safe employee and do things the right way. Because you think about it, you bring somebody in, whether it's for a full day, it's just a massive amount of information that's being new hire paperwork, all policies, procedures, I-9, driver's license, everything that's associated with drug tests, everything that's associated with hiring is a lot for employees. So some of that stuff that you can do before they get in, it helps out with that tidal wave of information that they're going to hit with. But the big thing I think is really more successful, and probably the best learning opportunity, is once they fill out all the paperwork, once they get set up with all their paper, all their PPE and everything that's what they're required to have, is once they get out into the field, really get them set up with somebody, get them somebody who's been like a mentor. We put a lot of our new hires in different colored hard hats. It's not necessarily a formalized program. Like we set up like a buddy system where, hey, this new laborer came through the door. Joe has been here for 2 years now. I'll understand the ropes, spend some time with him, get him integrated, work with him, keep an eye on him. And that way they have that swim buddy situation where they have somebody they can rely on, somebody they can talk to. If they miss something in the orientation that talks about payroll, they can team up with them and help guide them through some of those challenges an employee might face in that first 90 days until they really figure out their course of going and understand how the company works and how the company operates.
Yeah. What else are you doing to keep employees happy and engaged? Are you doing like reward programs for good catch forms or safety meeting participation, things like that?
Yeah, there's recognition lunches is another thing. A lot of the job sites, if they meet certain milestones, they'll have a recognition lunch, bring lunches in for the crews. There's always gifts like hats, shirts that are going out. Just for us, one of the big things that we get involved with is Safety Week, which happened a few months ago, where it's the lunches on the job sites, training that's taken place, recognition for employees. We do the whole gamut. Yeah, recognition takes place all the time and little thank yous. Those are all nice, but a lot of that too comes back down to is that some of the biggest differences that are out there is investing into your frontline supervision about things on leadership, how to treat people, how to talk to people. And it's some of those softer types items where it's not necessarily giving them a baseball cap that's gonna keep an employee here or shirt or whatever. It's how they're treated by their frontline supervisors, where if they're treated like a human being, they can express their opinions, they're listened to. And it might not always be something we're going to respond to, but at least they have an avenue to talk to people and get some guidance. Or if they have a concern where it's addressed and we can take care of it. Those are some of the softer skills where people will feel comfortable. And if there's that comfort level and they trust their supervisor and just do good leadership skills, where they'll stick around longer just because they like the environment that they're in.
Yeah. I'm curious over the course of your career, how that kind of mentality has changed. When you first got into safety, were people even talking about that kind of stuff? Or
remember I told you about the parachute? I think even throughout my career and being around, just seeing multiple different types of leadership skills. I've seen guys who yell and scream nonstop, and I've seen people you can real even keel and sit down and have a conversation with them, or supervisors who really care about their people, just generally. And you might see the supervisor on a Friday might just go out and buy a couple pizzas for his crew just to say thank you for what they're doing. And so I think the old school mentality of yelling and screaming at people is disappearing. There's still some of those folks out there that do that. I know some of the larger companies that are out there where it's more of, hey, you need to sit down and have a conversation with your people. You need to listen to them, maybe respond. And just because you're a supervisor and you think you have the most experience in the world, like you said, experience is one of those open-ended terms, the way I look at it. And when you talk with people that say, oh, I've got 25 years of experience, and the first thought that runs through my head is, what was that experience like? Was it a good experience? Was it a bad experience? When you tell me experience, what does that mean? You really need to sit down and step back and say, through my experience that I've seen, here's the best aspects of people that I want to emulate or I want to tie into how I manage and lead. And a lot of that comes back down to is that if you see these frontline supervisors, like them burning through people left and right, or nobody wants to stick around, it's usually because the way they're treating people and how they're responding and reacting. And I think that's one of the keys out there in today's day and age to get people to stick around, is that they have an environment where they feel welcome, they communicate, and they're listened to. That's changing. Like I said, back when I started, there wasn't a lot of that going on, but I've seen that morph over the years now, where people start to realize that, like, people yelling at me. I don't think anybody does. And I think that's just people started to realize over time where that's such an old school thought process and mentality where it's just going by the wayside, and people want to be treated like we are human beings.
Yeah. Okay. I've got a few more just kind of general safety and industry questions, not necessarily about like turnover.
Shoot, man, fire away.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have any specific advice for people who are looking to get into safety? It's kind of a broad question.
Run.
Yeah, let's say somebody who's
That's it.
trades labor work on the front line and they want to get into safety. What would you tell them that they need to do or they should be doing?
And if somebody really if number one, if somebody really wants to get into safety, talk to your company. Going back to that example I gave a little while ago, is that I've had plenty of people who have come back to me. Is actually there was this carpenter way back in my earlier careers where he was bilingual, and we started doing these training programs. And I said one part was English and the other part was Spanish. And so we had this one carpenter who was really, we asked for volunteers. Hey, we need somebody who will spend the time with you going over this information and understand so you can communicate it well, not just drop a PowerPoint up on the screen and regurgitate it to everybody, which drives me crazy and probably drives everybody else crazy. But sit down and actually talk to the guys about what's on the slide. And we did that once or twice with him, or actually, I think it was probably more than that. It just turned into like on a quarterly basis, we'd have all these big mass meetings. And he just started regularly doing that. And he actually got excited to do these presentations. And so we talked to him afterwards, like, hey, look, you seem to be really enjoying doing this. You seem very passionate about it, and invest time outside of work, understanding all these types of things. Would you be interested in making that transition over to safety? And he said, yeah, I'd be interested in making that transition over. And so it was sitting down and starting to get him educated onto it, moved him into that. He actually moved to another job where we needed a full-time safety manager and kind of a field coordinator. So we put him in that coordinator position to be out in the field. And it was really always interesting to go back and have that conversation with him. So what do you think it's all about? And he'd be like, I never really understood that there was this whole different world that's associated with it. And I think that goes back down to is that he had a passion for it, and he had a mindset that he really truly wanted to get into safety. So if you want to do that, I guess what that story behind that is, like, it's not just walking around on a job site. That's a very small part of it. It's how well do you work with people? How well can you absorb information? You're always throwing challenges and curveballs, and how do you respond and react to those is, to me, is one of the things that I think makes and breaks a lot of people's careers is how do you respond and react? If you're a person who flies off the handle on everything, it's probably going to be a challenge for you, because like I said, that every day you wake up, it's not like it's just a different box of animals you're playing with. So understanding that it's hard work, but it's very rewarding work, and you have to be passionate about it to get into it. And if you really want to do it, reach out to one of your safety managers within your company or safety director and approach them and have a conversation and say, look, I'm passionate about it. I want to get into it. And I want to understand truly how safety works, and not just think because it's easy that I can do it, that there's more to it. Look at getting a degree, moving into that process. And a lot of companies out there too have where if you're working, you're in it for the company, they'll do reimbursement for education, doing those types of things. So start moving in that direction. You can take a lot of online courses, but you can also, always, one of the big areas is getting involved in your safety department. If there's companies that have safety committees, if they have safety events that they're looking for people to be involved in, do it. Do whatever you can do to get yourself in front of a supervisor or safety manager or safety director. And if that's the direction you want to go, and if you're passionate about it, you'll find it.
You mentioned safety committees. That's a topic that Sam has been writing about recently. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what makes a good safety committee.
With safety committees, I've seen some work really well, and I have seen some that have not worked well. And I think one of the challenges with safety committees is, what is their objective within an organization? And number two, how they're set up. I have seen safety committees where they bring 10 people together and it turns into a gripe session for an hour, where they just sit around and complain about everything that's wrong with the company. And it's like a therapeutic session for them. And they go back to work for another month. Nothing happens. Then they come back a month later, and the Thursday afternoon, they get free pizza and they gripe about everything for an hour again and go back and nothing happens. And to me, that's useless. If that's your situation, why is a company going to waste their time doing it? You really need to have some boundaries and guidelines for what the safety purpose of the safety committee is and what they're going to do. If they're really going to be effective, you have to have some representation of management in there. And really, to my opinion, it should be a sounding board. Hey, these are some of the things that we're taking a look at. And I think a lot of it comes back down to who you structure, like the people you're bringing into the safety committee can make a huge difference in how successful it is. So it really says it should have parameters on what's the purpose, what's the intent of the committee, and how is it going to operate and function within the company. If it's just going to turn into a gripe session, said you're going to get nothing. But if you come in and say, okay, let's sit there and let's take a look at, okay, what are we doing well within the company, right? How do we maintain those things that we're doing well? And let's take a look at a couple things that we need to fix, right? So let's just pick a couple, just maybe pick one, maybe pick two. And let's strategize and work with the organization. It's okay, this is what's going on from management perspective. And obviously sometimes too, what happens out in the field, it's a totally different thought process of what's going on out in the field. And so how do we bring those two pieces together to say, okay, this is what we're doing. What's the field doing? And how do we bring these two thought processes together to make a new process successful for the organization, and use that as a platform to help roll out that program where, hey, this is not just management says or supervision says or the company says. This is a combined effort where we've got everybody involved into it and sit there and go, okay, then they also become the advocate, right? The folks out in the field, the people on the field become the advocate for the program and say, okay, this is what we can do. Take it from that aspect. The other things too, is I've seen with a lot of success with safety committees is having them do some walkthroughs of the locations and maybe sit down. And so they're doing that cross audit, that cross evaluation of workplaces. Here's the safety committee. Let's sit down and document what we're seeing, good and bad. Then we can sit there, okay, here's some of the trends that we've seen throughout the organization and what we can do to fix these types of problems. So if they're used more for a positive type purpose, I think you're going to see success with it. But I just go back to is that really develop how you want that safety committee to work. Vet that out with your organization and get it started. And if it doesn't work, step back and change it. I think there's value in them. I think there can be a really good value in it. But I think on the flip side of it, if it's not done right, it's a waste of time.
Well, those are good points. I wanted to also ask about something you just mentioned. You said some companies will pay for further education or training for their safety pros. In the industry right now, or maybe just within Sterling, what is the mix of safety folks who came up through the trades versus came from college or a more formal education scenario? And where do you see that trending over time?
Oh, that's a good question. With the younger professionals that are coming into the field right now, I think a lot more of those have probably been through a degree program, whether it's a 2 or 4 year degree. But a lot of the individuals who are in their latter stages of their careers, maybe 10 to 15 years away, I think a lot of those folks have just got in maybe 15, 20 years from retirement, been in this business for 20 years, 25 years. And a lot of those folks have been, I think from that perspective, you can find a combination of individuals who have got a degree or within their company, they were just looking for somebody to, hey, we need to fill this role for safety. And they volunteered for it. We have in our group some of those individuals who, again, goes back to that desire to want to do and want to see safety. And they've been very successful in their career. So that's just a mix that I've been seeing across the board.
Okay. In the future, do you think more formal education will be more of a necessity, as maybe for larger organizations where they have more complex operations, more complex safety program where they're more data driven? Do you see a formal education being more critical in those types of organizations?
What I'm seeing now is certifications, actually more so than the education. I'm seeing a lot now for CHSTs, STSC, anything typically from the BCSP those are the ones that I'm seeing most prevalent on a lot of projects. Some states now I've seen it where you have to have, say, it doesn't necessarily need to be on site, But if you're going to have somebody who's going to be in the world of safety, work like a safety manager, they have to have a minimum of a CHST or STS. And we've even seen that at the project level where they're requiring the certifications through the BCSP. They might even have some of their own certifications that they want these individuals to do. I mean, I see minimum of 30-hour, those types of things, but I haven't seen it yet. Obviously, if you have to go out and do your CSP and ASP, that aspect, you're gonna have the degree. Then you even see some of that in some certain states where they want to CSP. You gotta at least be available to consult with. So I see the certification part probably being more of a focus than the degree. But that could obviously change in 15 years too. But for right now, I think that's the big focus.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us again today. And thanks to our guest, Nick Kakasenko. If you'd like to hear the full podcast or any of our other topics, we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Thank you.
Thank you.